Okay, welcome to Tiffany and Dan, and this is a lovely couple from Elk Grove area, and they're on their first-time home buying excursion. We had some special some special guest stars today. So I'm babysitting my grand Frenchie here. This is Drax, and his family, my son and his wife and my grandkids. Yes, they went off to Santa Cruz today, but he's gonna leave us. And then you guys have somebody who is Shep, right?
Yeah, he's here, yeah.
Hi, Shep.
What's that, Sheppy?
You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about today and is, of course, your home buying journey, right? And so preparing and planning for that. And one of the things that I just kind of want to talk about is the reality. I mean, just like a lot of people rehearse things and they want to get everything perfect. And I just like to deal with the raw essence of where people are at, you know, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, and how we move forward through that. And so there's some things that you definitely have to, and you guys have done your homework. I know that you've done some prep. I just kind of want you to share with me to date kind of what your ideas are, what your plans are, and how you came about those decisions. And we can kind of walk through from there and see if there's any things that you might have missed, or, you know, and we'll just kind of go from there. And your family is growing, right? So not only do you have Shep, but you have a new little one that's on the way, and it's just it's very different times right now. So I just really appreciate your guys's willingness to kind of share your journey, and we'll go from there. So to date, like, what was your plan that you kind of envisioned?
Well, I originally, going back all the way to 2010, when we first met, and I was working over here for a company teaching youth soccer. I was coming back and forth on visas from the UK to the US, and then we finally made the decision to get married. We got married in 2012.
Yeah. Can't forget that now, Dan. That's important.
Got married in 2012. Moved in with Tiffany's parents. Were good enough when we first come here. Really didn't have anything because I was unable to work for 8 months while my visa was processed. So they were good enough to take us in. Once I had work authorization, we had the dream of getting our own place. And we managed to get on the renters market and begin renting a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Sacramento in Midtown, which was amazing, but it felt like it had its sell-by date after a little while. We ended up moving back to Elk Grove, on the west side of Elk Grove, and a beautiful home over by Stone Lake, and we were renting still. But the family that owned the home decided to sell it, so we moved back out to renting again in downtown Sacramento, where we decided we had enough of renting and it was time to try and get on the market in terms of buying our own home. So now at the moment we are back living with Tiffany's parents, where we're trying to save money, in the process of saving money, and we're very close to hopefully buying a home soon here in Elk Grove.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. You know, a couple of things that you said that kind of rings true, right? So this is like a match made in heaven, right? You guys meet, you decide, okay, and moves from dating and courtship and stuff to marriage, and you're coming from another country, and so you're dealing with visa, residency, and things like that as well. And so many of the home buyers right now are in similar situations. And so some of the things that you faced, and having to kind of wait and rent, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that it's going to be helpful to a lot of people to know that home ownership is definitely not only part of the plan, but it's something that's definitely doable. one of the things that I heard you say was about Midtown, that it definitely has a sell by date, right? Or use by date. It's kind of funny because I think of, Friends. All of us have seen that on Netflix, whether it was from our era or not, right? I know my daughter's like, oh my gosh, I just watched all the Friends episodes, and one of the things was they were kind of renting. They were like in the hub of there, and they were like with their friends and stuff. And that's definitely a season in your life. So that whole Midtown vibe and being able to walk and go to Burgers and Brew and all that kind of stuff, right? It's a thing. But was it really that you kind of were starting to focus more on um, growing your family that kind of changed that?
Yeah, we, as you said, it was great being able to walk to bars, to restaurants. But after a time, we were like, we didn't think, we focused down the line that we were going to be having a family. We didn't think that Midtown was the place we wanted to raise our kids. That was just a personal choice of ours.
Okay.
Well, we wanted to be closer to Tiffany's family. We're here in Elk Grove. So we decided that we were going to come here, and this is where we wanted to go. And the price of rent was so expensive that for that price, you could probably be paying on a mortgage as well. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, you hit the nail on the head. I just talked with a gal today. I was led her into a listing. There was her agent was actually out showing properties to another client. But there's times when we have to reach out and help one another. And so I let her agent know, hey, look, I can meet her out at the property. I can show her the property. And it was a single mom, and she's been renting. And she thought, now I can qualify. She's been at her job long enough. She got pre-qualified for a loan, and she's ready to start looking at that. And one of the things that you had mentioned also was that you moved into Stone Lake. And just like this gal that I was talking today, she caught wind that the owner of the home, the landlord, might be, because he's an investor and he has multiple properties, he might actually be in the process of possibly listing several of the homes. And that's going to radically change her life, right? Because she's renting. So either she's I don't know what price range, if the home was going to be offered in her price range or not. But as a renter, there's this sense of you don't ever know if you're going to get that letter that says the rent's going up, or the landlord would like to sell it. And once your lease comes up, and sometimes they want to go month to month after that, you kind of know something might be going on, right? So that's a little unsettling, I think. And at the end of the day, like you said, if I'm going to pay $2,000 a month in rent, I might as well, and gaining equity for the landlord, I might as well take that same $2,000 and put it into a mortgage payment. And at the end of the day, at the end of the year, I now have some equity, and I get to make the decisions as to whether I'm going to refinance, or if I want to sell, or if I'm just going to stay here, as opposed to getting a notice from somebody, right?
Actually happened to us.
Yeah, that was some of the problems we had was with it not being our own building, with us renting. Property management actually put the rent up at the end of our lease when we went month to month, and it increased by quite a lot, which kind of drove us out of there because it was so expensive, and it went to month, and we really didn't know, what was going to happen next. And then when we lived and rented in Elk Grove, as well, the landlord actually put the house on the market, and we would then be forced to have showings when we were there as well, which, if it was our own property, we wouldn't have to deal with that kind of stuff. So
right. Well, I'm really excited to kind of walk you guys through this whole process. And of course, there's, if we sat there and we could plan for what would be the ideal situation, right? We would all come up with an answer for that, right? But the reality is there's things like COVID-19, there's things like, mandatory face mask, and we're doing this meeting, via Zoom because it's supposed to be, safer for us. And then yet 1 minute we hear that it's safer, and the next minute we see, other things going on in the news, and we're getting all this mismatched information. I shouldn't say misinformation, but definitely things that contradict one another. And so there's a lot of anxiousness that's going on. And kind of, we had talked before about our grounding as people is our faith. I think we share the same faith, and I think that's been a huge, made a huge impact. I know when people see like, well, why aren't you freaked out over what's going on? I was like, well, because I kind of know who's in charge, right? So it's been my faith that's really helped to center me, because being newer in the real estate market, not newer to sales and marketing, not newer to working with people and helping them get to their goals through the insurance side of things, but just loving real estate and really wanting to work with couples like yourself. Then all of a sudden I can't do open houses, I can't do this or that. I mean, I could sit here and be whining about it. Instead, I'm looking for other ways to continue to serve people like yourself. And what has that done for you? Because I know there's been like a layoff, right? Or because of the whole situation. So your finances and your planning on your plan, what was going on, the world kind of has thrown you kind of a curveball, huh?
Yeah, I would say that this has definitely been a very unique time for us. I was laid off from my job at 4 months pregnant, and then we had plans to move and buy a home. We also got pregnant and found out late February. So that also just kind of shook things up. And then a few weeks later, we were in quarantine. Uh, so I feel like this has been the most not ideal first pregnancy, and everything has just been very different than what we maybe first had imagined.
Sure.
But I definitely think that it makes it a lot easier. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some days where it is very difficult, especially when like Dan can't come to a doctor's appointment with me.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I feel like we really try to center ourselves on like what we do have, our faith, and just being really appreciative for our good health and family. We know we're really blessed to be able to live with my parents, and to have an extra room for the baby that we're turning into a nursery. So these are just all things that we've honestly been blessed with. I mean, and it can be really easy to get low about things because some days it can feel that way. But when you really think about like how good our life is and how many blessings we do have, I think that really helps us just kind of keep centered and looking forward, because I feel like this is very temporary. So
Yeah.
because we know that it's a temporary situation.
Yes. I think there's a verse, right, that says, and this too shall pass. Like,
Yeah.
this is just, and it's really in the times of trials. And I know, Dan, you had said too, you had a job coaching and working with kids. And so you know firsthand. And Tiffany, I know I've been in some exercise classes with you and stuff, and gone on runs. Clearly I'm not able to keep up even with you being pregnant, but one thing that you know as people who train and train athletically is that it's doing that hard work that builds the strength and the endurance and the ability to persevere and move forward and become stronger, right? So even though this is not necessarily the way that you had planned it, you have the right attitude towards still stepping forward, right? So the timing might be a little bit different, might be you pushed out the actual move out date. Let's, stay planted. You've got, because of health things in the hospital and the baby coming and everything, but you've got a nice safe place to be. You can still make the nursery. So you're really focusing on the positive, but I see where this is also possibly strengthening you as a couple, and even strengthening you in understanding of living with parents and the value that they bring. Maybe the hair that you want to pull out as well, and maybe they want to pull out a few hairs as well too. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, because I have adult children, is you do anything for your kids, whether they're 2 or 32 or 92. It's just something that's in us as parents. And sometimes we're not able to. I mean, the desire is there, and sometimes we're not able to. So you, like you said, very blessed that your parents are able to provide you that opportunity. And your graciousness shows. But it's got to be a little testing too. I mean, my daughter moved home after college, and I can see that she's already pulling her hair out.
Yeah, no, I actually, it's interesting because of Corona, um, my niece who's 7 wasn't in school and has
Okay.
been here pretty much every day other than like the 2 days her mom works full time. So that, I mean, it just makes it a tricky situation because we're also like babysitting, working from home, trying to these
Right.
new schedules that are different. And I had told my mom the other day, as like frustrated as I can get on some days, that I feel like we're going to look back at this time. Hopefully, I told her when we're living on our own home and we have more than one kids, like it's just, we'll look back at this time and it'll be something we're like, wow, we went through that, and probably laugh at and think like
Yes.
that was like time. It didn't seem like it at the time, but it was time we got to spend quality time with our family that we probably would never get back. So I tell my
Yes.
mom that, and that's something she says as well. So that's kind of how we view it, because we do know, like I mentioned earlier, it is temporary, and this will all pass. So we'll look back on it in maybe a year or two, hopefully not 2.
Yeah.
But we'll get to look back at it, and just it will end up being time that we cherish with our family.
Absolutely.
Just
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I know this is a very personal journey. And some of the things that I just kind of wanted to go over tonight is, as far as like preparing to buy a house, right? So it's never too early to start looking at that. In fact, I think that they should do it in the schools and start very young with people as far as budgeting and planning and future and the reality a lot of times as parents, we don't necessarily let our kids know the cost of things because we don't want to burden them with it. But at the same time, I think there is a way to present information to where you're able to educate and not burden, right? So that people have perspective of the value of the things that they do have. So having said that, have you guys looked at any type of a home buying checklist or anything like that? Have you gone over anything that, because I know you said you wanted to save money, so you obviously know there needs to be money for a down payment. So what's been kind of some of your financial preparation and some of the things in your mind that you believe is going to get you ready? And from whom or how did you find that information? Because I think, there's a lot of people Googling things, different things. So I just really want to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, our knowledge is very limited when it comes to buying a house because it's a process we've never been through before.
Okay.
So it's great to have you to be able to help us and walk us through the process. We know that we have to have a down payment. From what I can Google and find out, it's typically for a first-time home buyer, it could be around 3.5 to 5%.
Good job on your homework. Yeah.
I know that credit score plays a part in helping you get approved for a mortgage. But outside of that, we really, as well as income, household income, we really don't know too much about the process of buying a house.
Sure. Okay. Well, and you're right. So that's one of the biggest things to do is to build your team, right? Build your team of professionals. So you're working with a real estate agent. That's number one, is to find a good agent, and good means that somebody who obviously is reputable, trustworthy, and that you have a connection with and feel comfortable and confident with, and is going to work on your behalf, because really you're hiring them, right? To help in making one of the biggest purchases, financial decisions that you'll ever make in your life. I mean, for most people, that's what it is. And then also, one of the other team members would be a lender. So just to help educate you on that, there's a lot of real estate agents who team up with a lender, and they call them like a preferred lender, because obviously in business, right, if you're going out to buy soccer balls and this one says, hey, if you get all your balls here, we'll give you guys discounts on your uniforms or whatever. So there's professional relationships that are built and designed. One of the things that I come to the table with from an insurance broker standpoint is I don't ever want to partner just with one person, because if there's a better loan program out there for my client, I want them to have the advantage of that. So I work with a couple of different lenders, and they work with several different programs. So like, you hear Quicken Loans, you hear all the banks and things like that. They all have programs, they all run specials. So I make sure that whoever I'm working with has access to all of those, because we want to make sure that you get the best package possible. And a lot of people don't know that, because they come in and they're trusting who they're with, and which is great. And they're like, okay, and this is the lender, and they'll help you with that, and we'll give you these. They'll call them we'll give we'll give you seller credits, or we'll give you or buyer's credits, or we'll do this and that. And you're like, oh, okay, it's just like a lot of information, right? So one of the things is to be working with a lender. What the lender's going to do for you is going to get you pre-qualified. Right now, today, because there's such low inventory, and we anticipate it's going to be low inventory for a while until people start selling again, right? Is that and because of COVID-19, you can't just go out and look at houses on a weekend, like that. That's what that's really what I love about real estate. My husband and I, that's what we did for years. We would just go to open houses because we loved seeing different neighborhoods, different things, getting ideas. But today, you can't go in unless you have a qualified letter, and that you have an intent to buy, because they want to limit, especially if it's owner occupied, they want to limit any kind of exposures. We've got to wear masks, we've got to sign documents and forms. And so building your team is really important, making sure that they're up on all the current things, and willing to comply with all of that, but also looking out for your best interest. So one of the things that we'll do is we'll connect you, and our next meeting will be just introducing you to one of the guys that I work with, and his name is Keith. In fact, we just got off the line with him, just refinanced, got a full percentage point lower on our mortgage payment. And because of what's going on in Elk Grove, we don't even have to pay for an appraisal. It was just done. They can just look at that and see. So, it's good things like that. And it's not always a smart thing to do, but sometimes it is, and to make that decision. And so one of the things is we'll get you set up with him. And even if it's a year from now or whatever, you're going to have things to pay attention to, right? Because it's kind of like, oh, well, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have bought that boat, or I wouldn't have, enrolled in that class, or I wouldn't have paid for that and put my credit card up $2,000 at the very same time that they were looking at my debt to income ratio, things like that. So the more we're educated on that, the better. The biggest thing is finances, though. So getting you pre-approved, but the thing that you guys can work on is creating your monthly budget with someone being laid off in the income. That's what we always try to do for my husband and I. It's just a personal choice, and you guys can do what you would like to do. But because I had a health situation back in 2013, November of 2013, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It made it, I became acutely aware that at any given time, one of our incomes could potentially be gone. And so when we were getting ready, we had sold the house and we were renting at the time, looking to buy. And when we were getting ready to buy closer here in Elk Grove, I said, let's just qualify on your income. And the reason I did that is it just made sense to me. Sometimes we can get in over our heads, but we never know what tomorrow brings. And I became acutely aware of that. So that's a conversation that you guys want to have, is what your monthly budget is going to be. Also to save for your down payment, which I think you said you've been working towards, correct?
Yeah, we've been working on that. We're probably, I don't 100% know how it works, but we believe, based upon the down payment, based upon what we believe we could afford, we're trying to get to a certain number in terms of a down payment. We're pretty close to that as well. Okay,
perfect. And then establish and maintain good credit. And you might have Googled some of that stuff as well, or maybe talked with some friends. Kind of a rule of thumb, sometimes they say, is to keep your credit cards below 30%, right? Some people say just make sure that they're always paid off. But really what they're looking at is whatever those minimum payments are on those credit cards. So they're wanting to look at your credit worthiness. Are you able to establish credit? How much credit has been given to you? And then how much of that have you been using? Are you paying everything on time? And then when the bottom line though is, if you've got 3 credit cards and the minimum payment on those 3 credit cards, let's say, is $100, that's $300 that's going to go into what your output is. And so they look at your debt to income ratio, and that's really important. So if you qualify for a house, and let's say that the mortgage payment is going to be $1,600 a month, and that's including taxes, insurance, everything. So if it's $1,600 a month, plus you have that $300, plus you have a car that you're paying $400 on, they're going to add all of these and make sure that this makes sense. It's for your protection. And it's also, of course, for the lender's protection as well, right? Because they don't want to lend money and get somebody overextended. Is that something that you kind of have been working towards?
Yeah, it was something we were working really hard towards until Tiffany lost her job. And
Yes.
then we kind of cut back because we were trying to pay off bills. So the question I have for you, Haley,
Yeah.
which is more important to pay? Because obviously Tiffany has both has student loans.
Right.
We also have credit card debt as well. Which one's more important to pay off if you're trying to buy a home, or is the one that's more important?
The credit card debt is definitely more important. And that's what I was told by the lender. So of course, as a real estate agent, I am not, I'm not a lender. So I'm not a tax advisor. But what I do know is that the student loans are something that usually are low interest bearing or no interest. There's federal programs and there's other things that they look at that. So if you have student loans, they look at that differently than they do, say, a credit card debt. Those are generally higher interest rates. They're not secured against anything. And so those are really the ones that you want to look at, making sure that you get those paid down. If you are already paying on student loans and there is a debt repayment plan that's already in process and you've agreed, or like some people have combined their student loans into one and it's a different program, then that's something that the lender will look at for you and see if they're going to count that money, against you. You fall against what your monthly expenditures are. But I do know for credit scores, the credit cards seem to bear more weight than the student loans do.
Yeah.
But no matter what it is, if there is so here's an example on medical. Sometimes people have where they owe the hospital, say, $2,000. If you go in and talk with the person in the hospital and say, look, we have a deductible, we're going to owe $2,000 for the baby, let's say, and say, I don't have a check to write you for $2,000. Is there a way we can make a payment? Oftentimes hospitals will sit down and they'll go over your budget and your monthly expenditures. Sometimes they'll reduce the amount that you owe and make an agreement for a repayment plan for you with no interest. Or if they do say, yes, you definitely owe the $2,000, but what can you afford? You share that with them, you sit down, you kind of work out a payment plan, and you may pay them $200 a month. Now, they're not going to report that against your credit score because it's not a collection account. It's just a private thing that you're owing to the hospital. When you sit down with a lender's going to say, are there any unsecured debts? Are there anything that you're making a payment to? Maybe you borrowed $5,000 from Aunt Jenny and you're paying her $100 a month. Those are totals that they're going to want to know, right? Because they want to look at what have you promised to pay someone. But the ones that bear the most weight are the ones that show up on the credit report. So I hope that helps a little bit there. And there's a way to get completely out of debt, right? So you work at paying the credit card off, you take the one that you owe the least amount on, you get that paid off, then you take that, what you were paying on that, you pay it on the next one, and you just keep working till it's all paid off. That's great for just getting rid of debt. But when you're in a situation to where you're working towards keeping your credit score higher, it is okay that you owe people money. What's not okay is that you owe them a lot. So you paid these 3 cards off, you spent $6,000 paying these 3 cards off, but you still owe this one and you're over 50% of what they allowed you to borrow. That will affect your credit more than if you would have taken part of that money on those other cards and paid that one down to 30% of the maximum amount that they would that they lend to you, right? Or that they have provided credit to you. So the rule of thumb is if someone's extended you a credit card that says it's $1,000 limit, then you would want to keep it below $300.
So question for you, Haley, when looking at purchasing a house, which is more important, to have a bigger down payment or to pay off debt first before putting down payment down?
Yeah. So down payment is important because that is going to walk you into the property, and they want to see that the money is seasoned. Sometimes you can get, gift money and stuff. There has to be like a track. There has to be a paper trail of where their money comes from, but they really want to see that you yourself have the 3.5% that you can put down towards it. It's okay that you still owe, the Visa $700 or this card over here $2,000, and you pay them $149 a month, and you pay this one $59 a month. They'll take what you pay and they'll add that together as part of your expenditure when they're looking at your debt to income ratio, right? But if you took that money, say $10,000, and paid off all your credit cards, well, now you're going to have to wait till you get that $10,000 back. And inevitably what happens, you might blow out a tire, or you need to get something where you might not have that cash reserve, right? So you're always, So it's okay to have stuff on the credit card. It's just the amount, the percentage that are you maxed out on it? That doesn't look good. There are some programs out there that are available for no money down, 0% to get somebody into a home. It's a USDA loan, I believe. There's also some special loans for educators. I don't know, you work in teaching kids and coaching children. There's nurses, doctors, there's different programs for different professions and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that we can look at getting you into a home. But that 3.5% should be in the bank. So if you are, that's something else that people don't understand. They're like, well, I've been saving money, but if it's in the bank, I just use it. So I pulled, this money out and I put it like, in the mattress or whatever. I mean, it may sound silly, but some people do, or they don't trust the banks, especially with COVID-19, right? We had all the shutdown. There was people that were pulling their money out of the bank and just like keeping it at home because they said, gold or cash, that's going to get you places, right? But the money has to be in there. Otherwise, it's like, where did this money come from? So lenders there's a whole thing that they want to make sure that money, and we don't think like that because we're not people who are laundering money and things like that. But that's one of the reasons why. So the rules apply to everyone. Yeah. And then the amount of the loan, right? So what the house is that you qualify for. So when you do the pre-qualification, they're going to say, let's say that we're just looking at your income and what you qualify for as a family, just based on where you're at right now today, based on the circumstances today. We can do something like that, and we can take a look at it. And they're going to look at the monthly, and they're going to look at what your bills are, and they're going to come up with that dollar amount. So let's say that if you're like, I'm just going to throw a number out. Let's say that you're like at 120,000, and they run the numbers, they look at your debt or whatever, and they go, okay, based on everything you qualify for, I could do $490,000 based on the payments that you're paying on your credit cards or your car or whatever. So that number now, that's what I take you shopping with. So now I start looking at homes. You're going to say, okay, Haley, we want at least 2 bedrooms. We want it to be a single story because we don't want stairs, or we'd like to have a pool. So you give me all of that criteria. We take what you're pre-qualified for, and then I hunt for that inside there's an MLS system that agents use that we're able to look at. And of course, online, you see this stuff all the time. There's things that come up. That's not always up to date with the most recent information. Sometimes people will say, Haley, what about this house? I'm like, I'm sorry, it's already sold. They're like, well, why is it on Redfin? Look, it's right here. And they show me. I'm like, well, that it's just not as updated as quickly. So as agents, we have access to that. But we do love having our clients do the homework as well, because you know what's really going to trigger for you. You're going to see something, or you're going to fall in love with something. And that really helps an agent know what you guys want. And the other thing is getting on the same page. One thing that makes me pull my hair out, but it's okay. But you've got a husband and a wife, and what's most important to the husband may not be most important to the wife, right? And so that's the kind of things that we need to look at, because sometimes you might have 2 different boxes, and we need to make sure you get in the same box so you're in the same house. Does that make sense? I think we're frozen here. There we go. Are you guys good? There we go. All right. So yeah, so I was just wondering, does that make sense to you then?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. We've talked about it a few times, because obviously I would like a pool. Coming from England, where it was very cold, and Tiff's obviously grown up here in California, where she's not really too fussed about having a pool in the first home.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also maybe Tiffany too, is it a little bit because you'll have little ones and it's kind of an added stress maybe until they learn to swim?
I also think it's like maintenance that we don't have time for.
Okay.
So that's why I'm like, why would we want another
Job.
thing?
Yeah.
Another job.
Yeah.
That will usually, and we have a dog and we'll have a baby. Like, I just don't find it necessary.
Yeah.
So that's what we talked about.
Yeah. So you guys can see then it's definitely some things, and I'm glad that you're already having those conversations, and those are things we want to look at. One of the things that I can tell you is being a homeowner and pool owner for many, many years in different pools, we just built a pool a couple years ago, and the equipment now and everything, the maintenance is just like, I mean, the pool basically takes care of itself. I say that, but my husband, I do see him go out there every once in a while, and he does, we do all our own pool stuff. And when I say we, it's like he's got a mouse in his pocket. He does it. He goes out and he just tests it a little bit and drops chlorine tabs, and every once in a while he picks up some more. There's some, not very often does he have to do like an algae thing or anything like that. And we've got solar heating, but the pool equipment and the pool designs today is different than years ago, where there was a lot of really, really maintaining that pool. So on a resale of a home, right? Yeah. So you're like, maybe you'll get a pool, Dan. So let's say that we look at a home that is, let's say it's 20 years old, and the pool is like maybe 15 years old, but it has new pool equipment. So that might be something that it would be a lower maintenance. It would be something that we would look at. If it's a home with a pool that has older pool equipment, maybe the pool equipment has to be replaced, or yeah, you're right, Tiffany. It could end up being just a nightmare. And we have lived in one of those houses where it had a vinyl liner. So there was a tendency, especially during the summer months, to really grow algae, just because that's what it did. And so it was like an everyday thing, especially in the summer. And so it did consume a lot of my husband's time. So that's why now with this new equipment, it's just like this is a breeze, but that's something that we can, talk about and look at and stuff. And one of the things too, single story to two-story. There are some people that just in their brain and in their mind, they're like, I always wanted a two-story. It's funny because kids usually want a two-story too. Like my daughter's like, I want a two-story house. I was like, yeah, you do the stairs then. You vacuum the stairs and clean them. And but what happened for me with my a medical setback, I learned that sometimes you can't climb stairs, and all of a sudden, that inability to do that freely really led me to believe I went single story after that. But if you're healthy and fine, everything's good. A two-story makes sense. But I do see a lot of people now looking for, if there's a two-story, they want to make sure that there's a bedroom and a bathroom downstairs. Is that something you guys have talked about, whether you want a two-story or single story or?
Tiffany's always wanted a one-story. I'm open to anything. Most of the houses in England where I grew up were always two-story.
Sure.
Very few were one-story. But I have nothing against the one-stories. I like them a lot, and I know there's a lot of them in California.
Yeah. The single story, like ranch style house or single story home, there's even new ones being built right now. They take up a huge footprint, right? Because you take the square footage and you spread it out. So a lot of times it'll give you a bigger courtyard in the back for the newer lots and stuff if it's a new build. But if it's an older home, like I'm right now, I'm on a lot and a half because I bought in an older neighborhood. I bought a single story with a raised foundation. There's a lot of charm, a lot of things that I wanted to do with it. But I have this huge yard, right? So land is really a commodity. The other thing is, there are homes out in the country that are on 2-3 acres. So those are options too. So those are some things that I want you guys to think about and kind of have those kind of conversations while you're laying there feeling the baby kick and wondering, what they're going to, it's a baby boy, right?
Yeah, it's a boy.
Yeah. And did you announce a name yet or no? You don't have to if it's till, but
No, we still have been going back and forth on names.
okay.
We've kind of only thrown it out there to family, and it'll probably change again next week. So
Right.
that's kind of how it's been going. Like it's kind of tricky because our last name is a first name, so we'll have 3 first names. So we're just trying to make sure it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't finalized anything quite yet.
Okay. So while you're having those conversations and thinking of those kinds of things, then you can be imagining what, the house, or is he going to grow up out in the country? Is he going to grow up in the city? Is he going to be in a single story, two-story? Those are the kinds of things that you'll want to think about. Even driving neighborhoods right now, just on a Saturday or Sunday or you have day off from work. Sometimes taking those strolls together and getting a feel for different neighborhoods, different parks that are close by that you'll be walking with the baby in a stroller and things like that. It's really good to be able to have that time to kind of prepare and look and know. So our next call will be with having a lender on. I was going to introduce you to Sheldon, and he had time available on Friday, but you guys went to Tahoe, and that looked like it was a lot of fun. So obviously, if we can meet up with some other professionals as well along our journey, I'm going to loop them in. But I want this to be as stress-free as possible. And I appreciate your time, and we'll just continue to walk with you. And in between now and like the next time we touch base, if you have specific questions that you'd like me to answer ahead of time and have those answers, we will definitely be talking to the lender, so we're going to get a lot of those questions answered. And if you know ahead of time some of those very specific things, that way we can eliminate, we can get right to the point and get you guys back off to your Sunday evening of activities. And I really appreciate this time. Do you have any other questions from me at this time? There you are. Sorry, my computer froze with you guys. So no,
Not right
No,
now.
I think
Just
we're
thank you
okay.
for
Yeah.
everything.
yeah, you're very welcome, and I'm proud of both of you for working out and doing all the things that you do, and staying busy and having those positive attitudes. When you're planted in the community like that, it's contagious. And so we're blessed to be a blessing. So I just appreciate you guys, and it's a real joy to see you in class when I'm there at the same time you guys are, and I like following you along on Instagram as well. And so I'm really excited to be working with you, and look forward to getting you step by step into that home ownership. And I'm just thankful that you're not throwing money away on rent right now, that you're able to save some money and be with family. And that's a beautiful blessing.
Thank you, Haley. Hopefully we'll see you in class this week.
Yes, you got to come early, girl, because it gets too hot after.
I know. I'm like,
What was that 4:30 class you guys did? Poor Dan almost died.
I'm coming early this week.
Yeah, I can't do anything past 9 o'clock if it's going to be those temperatures.
yeah,
Coaching is
really hot.
okay.
It makes a difference when it's really hot. So
It does, and especially being pregnant too, and dehydration and everything. So you got to get up early for that baby girl. All right. Well, you guys,
Thank you.
Yep. You take care, and we'll see you soon then.
Have a
Thank you,
good night.
Haley. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.